The date is April 1st, 1990. The SkyDome in Toronto is packed with over 67,000 rabid fans, all eager to witness the spectacle of WrestleMania 6. The energy in the building is electric, a boiling cauldron of anticipation, as one of the most controversial and intimidating men in professional wrestling steps onto the grandest stage of them all. Clad in his signature black trunks, fists clenched, eyes burning with unrelenting intensity, here is Bad News Brown. His opponent is the legendary Roddy Piper, a man who thrives on chaos, whose gift of the gab is only matched by his ability to fight. But on this night, Piper isn't stepping into the ring with just another opponent. He is up against a man who has carved out a reputation as one of the toughest, most dangerous figures in the industry. Bad News Brown wasn't the kind of heel that relied on theatrics. He didn't need elaborate promos or a stable of cronies backing him up. He carried himself with a quiet menace, an aura that told the world he was a man who walked alone. The World Wrestling Federation, in the midst of its golden era, was built on larger-than-life characters, including Hulk Hogan, The Ultimate Warrior, and Randy Savage. But Bad News Brown was a different breed altogether. He was raw, authentic, and in an era of scripted rivalries, he exuded an air of real danger. The fans knew it, and so did the wrestlers in the locker room. He wasn't merely playing a character, he was Bad News Brown through and through. Outside the ring, his reputation only grew. In an industry filled with men who built their personas around toughness, Brown was a former Olympic Judo medalist, a man who had earned his stripes in some of the most brutal environments imaginable. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who had been in real fights and had nothing to prove. Stories circulated about how even the biggest names in the business steered clear of crossing him. And yet, despite his undeniable talent, his unique presence, and his ability to captivate an audience, his career never reached the heights it deserved. A man who could have been a world champion, who could have stood at the pinnacle of the wrestling world, instead became a case of what could have been. His career in the Federation was marked by memorable feuds, moments of brilliance, but also a sense that the company never fully knew what to do with him. And then, tragically, far too soon, he was gone, in a sudden and heartbreaking end for a man who had spent his life fighting. To understand Bad News Brown, the man behind the scowl, behind the street-hardened bravado, we must go back. Before the Federation, before the sold-out arenas, and before he struck fear in the hearts of opponents. Born on October 22, 1943 in Harlem, New York, and raised in Queens, Alan James Coge grew up in an environment that required toughness as a prerequisite for survival. Queens in the 1940s and 50s was not an easy place for a young black man with ambition. Opportunities were scarce, and the streets could be merciless. But Coge was different. He had the drive to carve out something better, and he found his calling not in boxing, as so many others did, but in judo. It was an unconventional choice, but it would define the early part of his life. Coge dedicated himself to the discipline, training under legendary judokas and pushing himself to the absolute limit. His efforts paid off in 1976 when he won a bronze medal in judo at the Montreal Olympics. His triumph marked a historic first, making him the inaugural African-American to claim an individual Olympic medal outside the realms of boxing and track and field. This was no small feat. It was a moment that should have propelled him into the limelight, a moment that should have opened doors. But unlike boxers who won Olympic gold and were showered with lucrative offers, judokas received little more than a pat on the back. There was no million-dollar contract waiting for him, no sponsorship deals, just the harsh reality that he would need to find another way to make a living. Enter professional wrestling. It was in Japan that Coge first transitioned into the world of pro wrestling, training under the legendary Antonio Inoki. Japanese wrestling was different from the theatrical, over-the-top style of American wrestling. It was hard-hitting and brutal, a style that emphasized realism, and Coge thrived in it. He wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling under the name Buffalo Allen, quickly earning a reputation as one of the toughest foreigners to ever step foot in a Japanese ring. He wasn't there to play games, he was there to fight, and the Japanese fans respected that. Coge's first brush with the Worldwide Wrestling Federation came in February 1978, when he defeated Frank Williams under his birth name in a brief yet telling showcase. Returning in 1979, he became a regular presence on Championship Wrestling, and even challenged for the North American Tag Team Championship at Madison Square Garden. By the early 1980s, he made his way to Stampede Wrestling, the legendary Canadian promotion, run by Stu Hart. Stampede was infamous for its grueling training, its emphasis on real toughness. And Bad News Allen fit right in alongside the likes of Dynamite Kid, Bret Hart, and Davey Boy Smith. He became one of the most despised yet respected heels in the territory, a man who could generate heat like few others. But it wasn't just his ability to rile up the crowd, it was the way he carried himself. Other wrestlers might have put on an act, but Allen truly embodied the Bad News persona. It was only a matter of time before Vince McMahon's ever-expanding World Wrestling Federation came calling. Rebranded as Bad News Brown, he made his debut in the company in 1988. Brown's defining trait was an unwavering scowl, either etched in cold fury or breaking only for a loud, disdainful laugh at the misery of his opponents. He wasted no time in making waves by winning the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 4, eliminating Bret Hart in a stunning betrayal that kicked off a bitter feud. It soon became apparent that Brown was notably different from the other villains in the Federation at the time. He didn't rely on cheap heat or underhanded tactics. He was a lone wolf, an outsider who took what he wanted and answered to no one. Next came a brief yet fiery clash with World Heavyweight Champion Macho Man Randy Savage and his manager Miss Elizabeth in late 1988. During this period, Brown was thrust into a volatile storyline in which he stormed the Brother Love show, confronting Federation President Jack Tunney over being repeatedly denied title opportunities, an altercation that escalated into a physical assault on Tunney himself. On the March 11, 1989 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event, in a match against Hulk Hogan, Brown seized the microphone in a moment of sheer bravado, declaring it was time for the Ghetto Blaster. But as he prepared to unleash it, Hogan evaded the strike, turning Brown's bold proclamation into a costly misstep that sealed his eventual defeat. Brown's next war of words and fists erupted with Rowdy Roddy Piper, igniting at the 1990 Royal Rumble when Piper eliminated him, only for Brown to retaliate with an illegal elimination of his own. The fallout saw Brown mocked and jeered, a slight he answered with unrelenting venom, taunting Piper for his trademark kilt, dismissing it as nothing more than a skirt. As highlighted earlier, the feud reached its boiling point at WrestleMania 6, where their battle ended in a double countout. Originally set to continue their war, both men refused to take the fall, forcing the Federation to abandon the program entirely. Instead, Brown was pivoted into a heated clash with Jake the Snake Roberts, where he upped the ante by introducing a sewer rat in the form of an actual possum as a menacing counter to Roberts' infamous python. After SummerSlam in 1990, Brown departed the Federation, lamenting Vince McMahon's unfulfilled promise to elevate him as the company's first black champion. Cage spent several more years wrestling in various smaller promotions until retiring in 1999 due to knee injuries. Unlike many wrestlers, he didn't cling to the business. He moved on, working as a wrestling coach and security guard. But despite leaving wrestling behind, his reputation endured. In his autobiography, The Dynamite Kid recounted an incident where Cage overheard a racist remark allegedly made by Andre the Giant on the tour bus. In response, Cage ordered the driver to stop, exited the bus, and demanded that the Giant confront him in a one-on-one fight. Andre, however, remained seated and later offered an apology for his words. Yet fate would prove just as unyielding to Cage, as on March 6, 2007, the world received the news that Alan Cage had passed away from a heart attack at just 63 years old. It was sudden, unexpected, and a tragic end for a man who had spent his life fighting. Bad News Brown may not have held the championship. He may not have been given the main event push that so many of his peers received, but his impact remains undeniable. He was a pioneer who refused to compromise his principles for greater fame, a legitimate fighter who brought credibility to professional wrestling, and an Olympic medalist who helped bridge the gap between real combat sports and sports entertainment. He was, in every sense of the word, the real deal. If you're ready to witness more of the toughest enforcers from the golden days of the World Wrestling Federation, then don't miss this video right here. 15 legitimate WWF tough guys. Just tap or click the thumbnail appearing on your screen right now, and I'll meet you there momentarily. Seriously, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click it, as I think you're bound to seriously enjoy this one. Thank you for watching.